She was already shivering when she made the trade. Emma was 6, small for her age, tangled brown hair stuck to tear-chapped cheeks, the red of her sweater the only color she had left. She peeled off the one thing that still held warmth, her coat, thin and pilled and precious, and pushed it across the market step. In return, a baker's assistant slid a paper napkin with a slice of stale birthday cake onto it. The candle was long gone. The frosting had cracked like ice on a puddle. Emma bent over the sweet as if it were fire. Snow feathered down, catching on her lashes. She whispered to the cake the way some people pray. "For Mum," she breathed, "and for me if there's any left." When she reached to lift it, the too long sleeve of her red sweater slid back, and the cold found skin it should never have met, a pale forearm ringed with bruised fingerprints, a blistered welt, and, lower, an ugly mark that looked pressed into her by something hot and careless. It wasn't fresh, it wasn't old, it was the kind of mark that said someone decided they owned you. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from. Leave your country name in the comments below. And if you love stories about courage, loyalty, and community, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. At the end of the street, Sergeant Noah Ramirez saw it happen in the space of one breath. He had stopped beneath the crooked mercantile sign to rewrap the tape on his knuckles. The cold made old injuries superstitious, and to tuck back the corner of a weather-worn photograph he kept inside his breast pocket. In the picture, a little boy gummed a blue balloon while a woman laughed over his shoulder. The edges had curled from too much handling. Noah never clutched it anymore. He just checked it, like a pulse. Beside him, Shadow, a black and sable German Shepherd K9 with a muzzle dusted grey the way dawn dusts the horizon, lifted his head, nostrils working. Shadow didn't watch the cake. He watched the girl's uncovered arm, then the baker, then the alley behind the bakery, where two men in mismatched coats smoked and stared too long. The dog made a sound Noah only heard when something wasn't right, a low, bone vibration warning that felt like the floor tilting. Noah followed the dog's line. He had spent 20 years learning the grammar of danger. Even in the hush that came with heavy snow, the street wrote it clearly. The way the men stood with their feet planted to block retreat. The way the boy at the counter took the coat too fast. The way the girl kept speaking to the cake as though it was safer to talk to sweetness than to people. He crossed the distance like a man trying not to remember he could run. Shadow padded at his heel, then shifted, angling his body so he could cut between the girl and the alley in one lunge if he had to. "Hey there," Noah said, because every hard thing should start soft. "That for a birthday?" Emma startled, protectively cupping the slice. "It's for my mom," she said, the syllables wobbling. She can't come right now, but she's hungry in heaven." She nudged the slice closer to the doll tucked under her sweater, a porcelain thing with a cracked cheek and a ribbon tied at the throat. "We can share if I cut little." Noah felt the old ache twist under his ribs. He opened his coat, not to pull rank, not to flash a badge he didn't carry anymore, but to let the picture inside fall into view. "I used to share cake like that," he said. He wasn't lying. With a kid who thought frosting was a holiday. Shadow sat, leaned his shoulder into the girl's knee, and looked up at her. Dogs don't bow exactly, but kindness can look like it. Emma's hand, small and reddened, hovered over his head, asking permission. Shadow answered by pressing closer. The baker's assistant reached for the coat again, fingertips greedy. Shadow's ears cut back a single degree. Noah's hand hovered, and then stilled. "She already paid," Noah said, voice mild but edged. "Don't charge her twice." The boy froze, coat half-folded. One of the men in the alley flicked his cigarette into the snow and started toward them, a grin like a bad rumor. Noah didn't turn his head, but his breath shortened. Storms, he'd learned, make echoes of footsteps, but malice makes them precise. "Where's your coat, kiddo?" Noah asked, as if the answer weren't tugging at his bones. Emma lifted her wrist to push her sleeve down, and that was when she couldn't hide the rest. Noah saw the welt clearly, the shape it had been made with, round, stamped, careless. He had seen brands like that in places they did not call camps but were. He had seen smaller circles where cigarettes or lighters had done their slow arithmetic of pain, and there bruises in a pattern that matched a man's hand too perfectly to be chance. Shadow saw it too. He did not bark. He tipped his head and let out a long, mourning howl that started low and climbed until the windows of the shop hummed and a flock of chalk-white pigeons startled from the steeple 2 streets over. The sound cut through the snow and the market stall small talk. Conversations died mid-sentence. Somebody swore softly. The men in the alley hesitated, not from guilt, Noah thought, but from surprise at being announced. Emma flinched at the sound, then eased when she realized the dog wasn't angry at her. She slid closer to Shadow, tucking her bare arm behind his ruff. "It's okay," she told him, "because kindness is the only language children are fluent in, no matter their education." "I'm okay." Noah crouched, bringing his eyes level with hers. "Is somebody hurting you?" he asked. Not because he expected an answer, but because sometimes a question is a key you hand over for later. She swallowed. The tip of her tongue touched a split in her lip. "Only when—" "I'm too slow," she said. She looked down at the cake and blinked hard to keep the tears from blurring it. "I traded my coat because it's his birthday," she added, nodding toward the doll. "And also Mom's memories like sugar." The man from the alley strolled closer, pulling his scarf down to show a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything all right here?" he asked, sweet as rotten fruit. "Girl's with us. She helps. We keep her fed." Shadow's paws spread on the snow. Noah rose without breaking eye contact with Emma. "You keep her marked," he said, quiet. He shifted half a step so his body, without fanfare, stood between Emma and the man. "You're done." "Soldier," the man said, making it an insult. "You got a paper says she's yours?" Noah didn't give him the photo, he gave him the weight of his own stance, the calm that comes from surviving wars, and a worse one called grief. "I've got a dog that says you should leave," he said. "And a whole street watching." The assistant behind the counter set the coat down. The bakery's back door banged. Somewhere to Noah's left, a woman muttered, "Heard that dog last winter when the old mill roof collapsed. Found 2 boys alive. Don't cross that pair." The words were not loud, but they were enough. The man snorted, spat into the drift, and back to step. "City Relief Patrol comes through here now," he said. "They like order. They don't like strays." He pointed at Emma without looking at her. "She's a stray." He retreated to the alley, gathered his friend with a jerk of his chin, and was gone like a stain under fresh snow. Noah didn't relax. He knew men like that didn't leave. They waited. He turned back to Emma. She had stopped shaking. The slice of cake trembled on its napkin, a tiny mountain of brittle sugar. The mark on her arm throbbed the color of old plums. Noah reached into his coat. Shadow's ears softened when he saw what came out. Not a weapon, not a badge, but a knitted cap the color of dawn. "For now," Noah said, settling it over her tangled hair. "We'll find a real coat later." He slid his scarf off and looped it around her shoulders, careful not to brush the welt. "Can I walk you somewhere safe, Emma?" She frowned at her name on his tongue. "How—" "Your doll told me," he said, deadpan. It brought him the smallest, surprised breath of a smile. "Children will follow laughter like migratory birds, follow warmth." Shadow nosed the cake closer to her, then sat, framing her with his front legs. She lifted the slice and broke it into 2 unequal halves, nudging the bigger one to Noah. "For your boy," she said gravely, glancing at the photo's edge peeking from his pocket. "And then you can taste." Noah's hand tightened before he remembered to take it gently, to eat slowly, to let sugar do its small work. The frosting snapped like thin ice and melted into the back of his throat the way memory does when you don't guard against it. He swallowed, and something old unclenched. "Where were you going?" he asked. She shrugged one thin shoulder. "Away," she said. "Somewhere that doesn't make me a thing." Snow hissed against the bakery window. The wind changed, bringing with it the clatter of an engine, the clipped voices of the relief patrol, the brass-on-boot rhythm of the kind of order that wears a uniform and a blindfold. Noah didn't have to turn to know they were taking the corner fast. He tucked the photo back into his pocket, then took the napkin from Emma and folded it around the smaller piece. "Put this in your sweater," he said. "It's for later. You'll need later." Shadow stood. Emma did too, one hand still buried in his ruff. She leaned close, as if the dog could carry secrets. "If I tell you," she whispered into his ear, "will you remember?" Shadow pressed his head into her chest. "Answer and vow." Noah scanned the street once more, all the lines of risk and refuge crossing like wires over a battery. The patrol truck turned the corner, red light punching color into the white world. Somewhere behind them, the alley door creaked. "Stay with me," Noah said. And when he said it, he felt something click into place. The old oath, refitted. "I've got you. Both of us do." Emma looked up, eyes glossy but clear. She opened her mouth as if to tell him why she'd really traded the coat, the truth she'd kept for someone who might actually keep it. The first siren whooped. The alley laughter returned like a bad echo. She leaned in, stood on tiptoe, and gave the soldier her secret, soft as snowfall, sharp as a blade. He said if I wore the mark, no one would ever think I belonged to myself again. Shadow's howl rolled up a second time, longer now, fuller, the sound of a creature who knows the difference between pain and wrong. The cake in Noah's palm slipped, landed in the snow with a soft thump that sounded like a heart learning a new beat. And the patrol truck's doors swung open. The patrol truck coughed grey smoke into the snowy street, its red beacon slicing through white air. Emma stiffened, her small hand tightening in Shadow's ruff. Sergeant Noah Ramirez shifted his stance without thought, placing himself between the girl and the vehicle as naturally as breathing. The truck's doors opened with military precision. 4 men in thick grey coats stepped down, rifles slung. Their boots struck the ground in rhythm, echoing authority more than protection. The lead officer, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head, scanned the street as though it belonged to him. His eyes landed on Noah. "Sergeant," the man said, the word both recognition and accusation. "Didn't think we'd find you strays this far out." Noah's jaw set. He hadn't worn insignia in years, not since he left the line where orders had stopped meaning justice. Still, some men wore the past on their faces like a scar. "We're just passing through," Noah said evenly. Shadow growled low, not threatening yet, but promising. Emma pressed her face into the dog's fur, her cracked porcelain doll wedged under her arm. The officer's eyes flicked to the girl. "Where's her guardian?" "She's with me," Noah answered. The man barked a laugh. "Paperwork says otherwise. Children her age go to the committee. Order out of chaos, that's the law." Emma whimpered. "Please," she whispered to Shadow, "don't let them take me." Noah crouched enough to meet her eyes. "I told you. I've got you." He rose again, his voice harder now. "You're not taking her." The officer stepped closer, boots crunching in the snow. "She's marked, Ramirez. You know what that means. She's property until she's reassigned." Noah's breath fogged between them, hot against the freezing air. He touched his breast pocket where the old photograph lived. Not again, he told himself. Not another child lost to men who confuse control with salvation. Shadow suddenly barked, sharp and thunderous. The sound jolted the bakery's shutters. The patrolman flinched, rifles twitching toward the dog. "Easy," Noah warned, one hand up. "You point that weapon at him and you'll regret it." The officer smirked. "What's the play here, Sergeant? Gonna start another war? For a coatless kid?" Emma's voice piped up, trembling, but clear. "I traded it for cake." She lifted the slice still clutched in her hand, frosting cracked, snowflakes melting into it. "Because Mum's hungry in heaven." For a moment, the street hushed. Even the officer blinked, thrown off by the rawness of a child's truth. Then his face hardened. "Sentiment doesn't change the rules. The girl comes with us." Shadow stepped forward, teeth flashing in the red light. Noah's fingers brushed the safety on his rifle. His pulse slowed the way it always had when choice narrowed to a single road. "Before you try," Noah said quietly, "you should know something." He glanced down at Emma, then back to the officer. "I walked away from orders once. I won't walk away from her." The officer tilted his head, considering. The patrol behind him shifted, restless in the cold. Somewhere down the alley, the two men who had claimed Emma earlier lingered, waiting to see who won. The wind cut sharper, carrying with it the tension of everything unsaid. Emma squeezed Shadow's fur and whispered, almost too soft to hear, "Please don't let me go." And Noah knew the next move would change everything. The silence before the storm was a strange thing. Snow muffled sound, but the air crackled with tension, like wires pulled too tight. Sergeant Noah Ramirez felt it in his bones, the way he used to before firefights overseas. The lead officer smirked, stepping closer. "Step aside, Ramirez. You've got no claim. The committee decides where she belongs." His eyes flicked to Emma, small and trembling, her tangled brown hair dusted white, her thin arms clutching the cracked porcelain doll and the slice of cake. Beside her, Shadow stood rigid, ears pinned, teeth bared just enough to gleam. The dog's low growl was steady like a warning drumbeat. Noah's voice came quiet but unyielding. "She's not going with you." The officer laughed, signaling to his men. 3 seconds to rethink that." Noah didn't move. His hand hovered over his rifle, not raised, not threatening, but ready. His other hand brushed his pocket, the one holding the old photo of his wife and boy. The faces in it stared back at him, reminding him what he'd already lost to rules that forgot people. "Shadow," Noah murmured. The dog shifted, positioning his body fully between Emma and the patrol. The officer's smirk faltered. "1." Emma's voice broke the count. Soft, but it cracked the moment like glass. "Please don't make me sleep outside again." The words cut through Noah sharper than any bullet. His throat tightened. He looked at her, small, shivering, marked, and something inside him settled. This wasn't a fight about law or order. It was about promises. 2, the officer barked. Noah drew his rifle, not up, not yet, but held it across his chest. His stance said what his voice confirmed. "If you reach for her, you'll have to go through me." Shadow barked once, explosive and fierce, the sound echoing down the frozen street. The patrolman jolted, rifles twitching upward. 3, the officer began but never finished, because Noah fired, not at them, but into the snow at their feet. The round snapped the silence in half, snow erupting in a white spray. "Last warning," he growled. The patrolmen froze, their leader cursed, spitting into the snow. "You're finished, Ramirez. Committee won't forget this." He jerked his hand. The men backed toward the truck, rifles still raised, but no longer confident. They climbed in, the engine coughing to life. The truck lurched away, red beacon fading into the storm. The street was silent again, except for Emma's quiet sobs into Shadow's fur. Noah lowered his rifle, breath shuddering out. He crouched, meeting her eyes. "You're safe. I've got you." She shook her head, whispering through tears. "They'll come back. They always come back." Noah touched her shoulder gently. "Then so will I." His voice was steady now, the vow heavier than steel. Shadow leaned against them both, chest rising and falling, his body a wall of warmth against the cold. But Noah knew Emma was right. The patrol would return. And next time, they wouldn't leave without her. The market stalls emptied quickly after the patrol truck vanished into the storm. People went back to pretending survival was simple, trading, shuffling, avoiding eye contact, but the silence left behind still clung to the air. Sergeant Noah Ramirez, weary soldier in his 40s wearing camouflage uniform, knew that silence well. It was the kind that comes before danger circles back. He turned to the small figure at his side. Emma, a frail 6-year-old orphan girl with tangled long brown hair, wearing a tattered red sweater, eyes filled with sadness or tears, held onto her cracked porcelain doll in one arm and the last bite of cake in the other. She looked up at him, fear widening her eyes. "They'll come again," she whispered. Noah crouched, his face weathered and lined, a man shaped by too many winters of war. "Then we don't wait for them," he said. He brushed snowflakes from her hair and tucked the doll tighter against her chest. "We move now." Beside them, Shadow, a loyal German Shepherd K9, pressed close. His coat was thick, dusted with snow, his eyes burning with an animal's certainty. He had already turned his body toward the alley, nose working, ears pricked. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. Noah understood the warning. The two men from earlier had returned, their shadows stretched against the wall as they followed, waiting for their chance. Noah stood, shifting his rifle to his shoulder, and reached down for Emma's hand, her small, cold fingers wrapped around his gloved ones. "Stay between me and Shadow," he instructed. They pushed into the storm, snow clawed at their faces, drifts rising to swallow the streets. Emma stumbled once, but Shadow nudged her gently from behind, steadying her. The dog's body moved like a shield, every step measured to keep her upright. Behind them came the crunch of boots, too deliberate to be the storm, too hungry to be chance. Noah glanced back and saw the two men trailing them, scarves pulled high, hands tight on iron bars and knives, predators who thought a child was prey. "Faster!" Noah urged. He bent, scooping Emma into his arms. She gasped, but clung to his neck, the cracked doll trapped between them. Shadow broke into a trot, weaving through the snow-laden streets ahead, clearing the way. "Where are we going?" Emma whispered against Noah's collar. "A place with walls," he said. He scanned the horizon and spotted it, a half-collapsed townhouse with one side still standing, windows broken, but roof intact. Not safe, but safer than open ground. The men behind them quickened. One shouted, "You can't keep her, soldier!" Emma whimpered, clutching her doll tighter. Shadow snarled, ears flat, his hackles rising as he caught the words. Noah's chest burned from the cold air, but he didn't slow. He reached the townhouse, slammed his boot against the door until it gave, and slipped inside with Emma. Shadow followed, spinning to face the doorway, his teeth bared in warning. Snow gusted in behind them, carrying the echo of boots too close. Noah set Emma down gently behind a broken couch. He crouched, so his weathered face met, her terrified one. "Stay low, stay quiet. Don't let go of Shadow if he comes to you." She nodded quickly, tears brimming. "Promise you won't leave." "I won't," Noah said. He gripped her shoulder once, then rose, rifle steady in his hands. Shadow growled, the sound deep enough to shake the rotten floorboards. Outside, footsteps pounded nearer. The men were coming. Noah planted himself in the center of the room, snow blowing in around him, the rifle braced tight, his shadow stretching long behind him. His voice was steel. "You come through that door and you'll regret it." Emma's cracked porcelain doll slipped from her arms, tumbling into the snow-drifted floor with a dull thump. She gasped softly, frozen. And Noah, weary soldier in his 40s wearing camouflage uniform, felt memory crash through him. His own son's toy dropped in a war zone years ago, before everything fell apart. The past and present blurred in the howl of the storm and the growl of the loyal German Shepherd K9, ready to fight. The townhouse shuddered under the weight of the storm, its broken windows howling like old wounds. Inside, Sergeant Noah Ramirez, a weary soldier in his 40s wearing camouflage uniform, stood braced with his rifle. Snow swirled at his boots where the wind forced its way in. His eyes, dark, heavy with years of war, never left the doorway. Behind the broken couch crouched Emma, a frail 6-year-old orphan girl with tangled long brown hair, wearing a tattered red sweater, eyes filled with sadness or tears. She clutched her cracked porcelain doll tight against her chest, though it was half buried in snow from when it fell earlier. Her small body shook, though not just from the cold. She kept whispering, "Please don't let them take me, please don't let them." Beside her, pressed close as if he could fuse himself to her, was Shadow, a loyal German shepherd K9. His coat bristled, hackles standing, ears pinned forward, his teeth gleamed in the fractured light, a low, steady growl building in his chest like thunder. Every breath puffed white in the cold air, each one carrying promise, protection. The footsteps outside grew louder, boots crunching on snow. A bar slammed against the wall, sending a shower of plaster into the room. Then the door burst inward. 2 men staggered in, faces shadowed by scarves, weapons crude but dangerous. One had an iron bar, the other a knife. Their eyes flicked to Noah, then to Emma cowering behind the couch. Hunger and malice burned there. "Soldier!" one spat. "Step aside, she ain't yours." Noah didn't flinch. His voice came out calm, though his finger tightened against the trigger. "She's not yours either. Take one more step and I swear you'll leave limping." The man with the knife sneered. Big words for a washed-up vet. That was when Shadow moved. He launched like a bullet, paws slamming into the knife man's chest. Teeth sank into thick fabric, ripping cloth and skin beneath. The man screamed, stumbling back into the wall. Blood spotted the snow instantly. The other man swung the iron bar, narrowly missing the dog's flank. Noah's rifle cracked. The bullet buried itself in the floorboards inches from the attacker's boots, the sound deafening in the small space. "Next one isn't a warning," Noah growled. The men froze. One clutched his bleeding arm, the other glared, but didn't advance. Their bravado faltered under the soldier's unblinking stare and the K9's furious growl vibrating through the room. Emma clutched her doll tighter, her sobs muffled in Shadow's fur. Then, as the silence stretched, she suddenly whispered, so faint Noah almost missed it. "They hurt me because I wouldn't call them Dad." The words hit Noah harder than any weapon could. His throat closed, the rifle in his hands felt heavier, his knees weaker. He had seen cruelty in battlefields, but this, branding a child, stealing her words, her right to name family, was worse. Shadow's growl rose, echoing Emma's pain in a language older than speech. Noah steadied himself. "You need to leave, now." His voice was lower than a whisper, colder than the snow outside. The men exchanged a look, calculating the dog's teeth, the soldier's rifle, the burning promise in his eyes. Then, with curses and snarls, they backed toward the shattered door. "This ain't over," one spat. "The committee always comes for what's theirs." When they were gone, only the storm remained, filling the room with its roar. Noah lowered his rifle and knelt by Emma. Her small face was streaked with tears, her lips trembling. She looked at him as though waiting for betrayal. He touched her shoulder gently. "Emma," he said, voice breaking against her name. "No one decides who you call Dad but you. Do you understand me?" Her eyes searched his, desperate for truth. Slowly she nodded. Shadow pressed his body against them both, his chest heaving, his fur warm against Emma's cheek. And Noah, weary soldier in camouflage, broken but still standing, knew he had just crossed a line there was no returning from. He wasn't just protecting a child, he was declaring war on anyone who tried to steal her again. The storm had not let up. Snow lashed the empty streets like a whip, burying everything in white silence. Sergeant Noah Ramirez, a weary soldier in his 40s wearing camouflage uniform, carried his rifle slung across his chest as he pushed through the drifts. His breath smoked in the air, each step heavy, each muscle tight with exhaustion. In his arms, bundled against his chest, was Emma, a frail 6-year-old orphan girl with tangled long brown hair, wearing a tattered red sweater, eyes filled with sadness or tears. She clutched her cracked porcelain doll beneath the folds of Noah's scarf. Her head rested against his shoulder, eyelids drooping, but fear still flickered in her small voice. "Where are we going, Mr. Noah?" "To somewhere warm," Noah answered, though he wasn't sure himself. His eyes scanned the horizon constantly, trained by years of patrols and ambushes. He couldn't risk stopping. At his side padded Shadow, a loyal German Shepherd K9. His black and sable coat was thick with snow, his breath steaming in great puffs. He moved like a shadow itself, never ahead, never behind, always guarding flank and path. His ears twitched constantly, every sound measured for threat. The outline of a building rose through the storm, a church, half buried in snow but still standing, its steeple crooked yet proud. The faint glow of firelight seeped through broken stained glass. "There," Noah muttered. "Almost there." They pushed to the heavy wooden doors. Noah knocked with the butt of his rifle. At first, nothing. Then the sound of bolts sliding back. A sliver opened, revealing a gaunt face under a shawl. "What do you want?" the woman demanded, voice wary. "Shelter," Noah said simply. He shifted Emma into view. The child's cheeks were raw from wind, her small fingers white with cold. "Just for the night." The woman's eyes softened slightly, but suspicion lingered. "No trouble." "None," Noah promised. The door opened wider. They stepped inside and warmth hit them, barely enough to banish the sting of the storm, but enough to feel like mercy. Candles lined the pews, fires smoldered in makeshift barrels, families huddled together under blankets, their eyes flicking toward the newcomers. Emma whispered, "It's warm," and buried her face deeper in Noah's coat. A figure approached, Sister Margaret, tall and stern, wrapped in layers of wool. Her face was carved by years of hardship, but her eyes carried authority. "You bring a child into this?" she asked Noah sharply. "She has nowhere else," Noah replied, his tone calm but edged. He placed Emma gently on a bench, Shadow immediately lying at her feet like a living wall. Margaret's gaze fell to the dog, then to the rifle. "Both weapons," she said flatly. "One metal, one fur." Noah's jaw tightened. "Both protectors." The murmurs of the people in the pews grew. A man muttered, "Another mouth to feed." Another hissed, "She'll bring trouble." Emma's eyes widened with fear. She clutched her doll tighter and whispered, "Please don't make me sleep outside again." Noah knelt, so his weary face met hers. "No one's putting you back out there," he said firmly. He looked up at Margaret, steel in his tone. "She stays." Margaret studied him for a long, tense moment. Finally, she nodded once. "Then you earn her keep. We all do. Guard duty at the doors tonight." "I'll take it," Noah said without hesitation. Shadow gave a quiet rumble of approval, lying even closer to Emma, his chest warm against her tiny legs. As Noah stood, his hand brushed his breast pocket. He thought of the photo inside, the faces long gone, and how Emma's whisper had bound him tighter than any oath. He didn't yet realize the church's warmth came with its own dangers, laws as harsh as the snow outside, and eyes always watching. The church creaked in the storm, its cracked, stained glass rattling against the wind. Inside, shadows from candles danced across the cold stone walls. Sergeant Noah Ramirez, a weary soldier in his 40s, wearing camouflage uniform, stood at the heavy front doors on guard duty, rifle in hand, scanning every flicker of movement. The storm outside was nothing compared to the tension brewing within. On a wooden pew near the fire sat Emma, a frail 6-year-old orphan girl with tangled long brown hair, wearing a tattered red sweater, eyes filled with sadness or tears. She hugged her cracked porcelain doll to her chest, her knees drawn up as if making herself smaller. Beside her lay Shadow, a loyal German Shepherd K9, his head resting protectively across her lap. His ears twitched at every harsh voice in the room, his golden eyes sharp. The families gathered around the fire whispered, throwing glances at the girl. A man with a grey beard muttered, "We barely have food for our own. Why take in another stray?" A woman hissed. "She'll bring trouble. Look at the mark on her arm. The committee will come." Emma flinched and tried to hide her arm under her sweater. Shadow growled softly, a warning for them to back away. Then Sister Margaret strode forward, her shawl pulled tight, her eyes like flint. "Silence!" she snapped at the murmurs. Then she turned to Noah. "She is your responsibility, but the rule stands: everyone here must work for their share, even children." Noah's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, his boots echoing on the stone floor. "She's 6 years old. She's not working in the cold, and she's not being put outside." Murmurs rose again, accusations, resentment. One man, tall and gaunt, stood up. "If she eats, she works. If she can't work, she goes. That's the law." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She clutched her doll tighter and whispered, trembling, "Please, don't make me sleep outside again." Noah turned sharply toward the man, his weary face hard as steel. "You'll have to put me out before you put her out." His voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Shadow rose to his feet beside Emma, a low growl rumbling from his chest, his body between her and the angry voices. The pews went quiet. Sister Margaret's stern gaze lingered on Noah. She studied the soldier standing tall, the little girl trembling behind him, and the loyal German shepherd canine bristling with protection. Finally, she nodded once. "Then you will take double duty, guard the doors tonight and tomorrow. The girl stays." The crowd grumbled, but obeyed her authority. The fire crackled, the storm roared outside, and the whispers slowly died. Noah turned back to Emma, kneeling so his tired eyes met her frightened ones. He softened his voice. "You're safe here, for now. Nobody's putting you outside. Not while I'm breathing." Emma sniffled, pressing her face into Shadow's fur. The dog licked her cheek gently, drawing a small, broken smile from her. That night, when she finally drifted to sleep on the pew, Noah checked the door, then sat nearby, watching her. His hand brushed the pocket with the photograph of his lost family. And in the dim light, with Shadow keeping silent vigil, Noah whispered to himself, "I already failed once. I won't fail her too." The storm raged through the night, snow hammering against the church walls like 1,000 fists. Inside, the fire burned low, throwing weak light across the weary faces of those huddled in the pews. Sergeant Noah Ramirez, a weary soldier in his 40s wearing camouflage uniform, sat at the heavy oak doors with his rifle across his knees. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he didn't let them close. Every groan of the wood, every whip of wind, every distant crunch of snow kept him alert. He had promised. On a pew close to the fire lay Emma, a frail 6-year-old orphan girl with tangled long brown hair, wearing a tattered red sweater, eyes filled with sadness or tears. She was curled up beneath Noah's scarf, her cracked porcelain doll pressed tightly to her chest. Her tiny breaths rose and fell unevenly, her face still drawn with fear even in dreams. At her feet lay Shadow, a loyal German shepherd canine. His muzzle rested on his paws, but his eyes never fully closed. Every so often he would lift his head, ears twitching toward the door, then lower it again against Emma's legs. His body heat kept her warm where blankets could not. Noah shifted, weary joints protesting. He glanced at Emma again and thought of the words she had spoken earlier. "They hurt me because I wouldn't call them Dad." The memory twisted like a knife. He pressed his hand against the pocket where the old photograph rested, his boy with the balloon, his wife's laughter frozen in time. For years the picture had been a weight, a reminder of what he had lost. Now it felt like a bridge. Emma stirred, whimpering. Her lips moved, barely audible at first. Noah leaned closer. "Please," she murmured in her sleep, "don't make me sleep outside again. Daddy!" The word broke him. Noah dropped his rifle carefully against the wall and lowered himself to the pew beside her. His weary face bent into his hands for a moment, shoulders shaking. The word rang in his chest, both gift and wound. Shadow lifted his head, watching silently as if bearing witness to something sacred. Noah drew a shaky breath, then gently brushed Emma's tangled hair back from her damp cheek. "I'm here, Emma," he whispered. His voice cracked, but the vow was clear. "I won't leave you. I'll be your father if you'll have me. No one, no committee, no patrol, no man with a mark will ever take you again. That's my oath." Emma shifted in her sleep, her small hand slipping out from the blanket to curl weakly around his fingers. She didn't wake, but her breathing steadied, her face easing into something close to peace. Noah's vision blurred, but he let the tears fall. He squeezed her tiny hand gently, sealing his promise. Shadow leaned forward, resting his great head across Noah's lap and Emma's legs, pressing them together as if binding soldier and child in one circle. His eyes closed at last, trusting the vow. The storm outside howled, but within the church's cold stone walls, something warmer took root. A weary soldier in camouflage, a frail orphan girl in a tattered red sweater, and a loyal German Shepherd K9 had become a family. And for the first time in years, Noah Ramirez let himself believe in tomorrow.